National Premed Day live for 2021. We're back for our afternoon sessions with Matthew Meeks, Executive Director at the Texas Health Education Service. How are you doing, Matthew?
Oh, I'm doing very well, and it's good to be here. Thank you, Ryan.
It is great to have you here. Your predecessor, Dr. Scott Wright, has nothing but the best to say about you. So I don't take anything he says at face value. So hopefully, hopefully it's better than that. Enrique Hasso, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having us back this year for another National Premed Day.
I'm excited to have you back. You are the Associate Director at the Texas Health Education Service, the kind of do-it-all podcaster dude and everything else there at Texas Health Education Service. So I keep saying Texas Health Education Service, but what people know is TMDSAS. You are the bright mind behind the Texas Medical and Dental School Application Service. So you, too, are the dream crushers for the thousands of students who don't get into medical school every year. Is that right?
We make dreams come true.
Oh,
that's I don't know where you're getting your information.
We're going to reframe that, Ryan.
Okay, all right. I've been told I'm a little pessimistic, but that's all right. Well, I'm excited. We have some slides to go through. We'll have tons of Q&A. So if you're watching this live, come on, ask some questions here in the YouTube chat. A lot of people are switching over from the old stream, so we'll let them come in. But I'll let you two take it away with your slides.
Sounds great. Thank you. So, Matthew, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Enrique. And yeah, Ryan, it is great to be here. And it's good to have Enrique here with me, who I like to refer to Enrique as my partner in crime, but or co-creative, right, Enrique?
That's right.
We do a lot of talks and presentations throughout the year. And often times these talks are packed with information. But today, we wanted to simplify things just a bit. Enrique and I have for our discussion today 7 things every applicant planning to apply through TMDSAS should know, including dispelling a few myths about the process. And we're gonna have a good time and hopefully keep it fun and lighthearted. So Enrique, I'll let you.
That's right. So let's just dig right in.
So yeah, today's objectives, we're going to challenge some common myths about applying to the Texas medical schools through TMDSAS. And really our mission as the Health Education Service is to help you to become a pre-health insider, empowered with data and information to position you for success.
Yeah, we're definitely here. We're making dreams come true.
These are our member institutions as part of TMDSAS, and it is a growing number. Medical schools this year, we added Baylor College of Medicine new for EY 2022, and we're so excited to have them and what this means just as thought leaders coming to the table with their ideas on how to conduct outreach and improvements to the application. And so we're really excited to have them this year. But for the last 4 or 5 years, we've added pretty much a new member institution every year. We also added the Woody L. Hunt School of Dental Medicine last year, and then also as part of our veterinary member institutions, the Texas Tech University School of Veterinary Medicine. So welcome our new members.
All right, I lost my window. I'm really sorry. Let me get this back up. You would think this is our first National Premed Day.
Is this where I tell a joke, Enrique? I was gonna say I'm not.
Yeah.
You got to do a little dance, Matthew.
I can't do a dance. So we're gonna talk a little bit about what makes TMDSAS, applying through TMDSAS, unique, the process, and this picture of Willie Nelson has absolutely nothing to do with any of that, but or the armadillo, or what did you call the image there on the bottom left-hand corner, Enrique?
Oh yeah, we got our tumbleweed. We've got armadillos and we got Willie, but we have so many other opportunities. So we thought we would just tackle this one head on. As soon as you're admitted to Texas medical school, you become Willie Nelson's best friend.
All right, so I wanted to just say a quick thing. Part of the health education service, we have JAMP, the Joint Admissions Medical Program. And look, if you're a high school student or a rising college freshman in Texas and are looking for a pathway to medical school, JAMP can help build your path. The program provides scholarships and dedicated support and connects you to summer internships and guarantees admission to a Texas school. So it's an incredible program. If you're a high school senior or if you're in high school, you're thinking about going to medical school or a college freshman, check out texasjamp.org for more information.
I forgot to mention earlier, but this presentation is available on insighthealtheducation.com. We have a link so that you all don't have to write notes furiously, and all of these hyperlinks, you can actually click on them when you go check it out there.
I took him off the stream.
Thank you.
Matthew, your sound broke up. I don't know if you can try to do a little reconnect there. Enrique, I'll let you continue on.
Yeah, I'll take it from here. So some of the differentiators for TMDSAS, of course, we are our own application service. So there are things that are similar to other national services like ATSAS, ACOMAS, or AMCAS, or VIMCAS, but some of the things that differentiate TMDSAS in particular is that you can submit your TMDSAS application before your letters of evaluation and test scores are sent. Your transcripts are only submitted upon request to TMDSAS. So you don't send those in along with your application. You don't have to wait for them in order to get your application over to the schools. Also, TMDSAS calculates standard letter grade. So a flat grade is what we do. Here in Texas, there's several institutions that do like plus minus or other variations of flat grades. And so we will take, an A plus is still an A with TMDSAS. So that means that your GPA through TMDSAS may be different from what you see at your university. Part of the processing with application is that we evaluate your state residency. And we'll talk about why that's important. And then we also do coursework coding and evaluation because there are just so many different GPAs that are calculated at the school see. And so we make sure that everything that you enter in the application is going to generate the correct GPA. We also have a uniform application for all of our participating member medical institutions. So if you're applying to one school, if you're applying to Baylor College of Medicine and you're applying to Long School of Medicine and Texas Tech University School of Medicine, the same application is going to apply for those three. And in fact, we have a flat rate for applying to one or all of our schools here in Texas. So all medical schools except for two, the University of North Texas TCU campus and the University of Incarnate Word School of Osteopathic Medicine, they use MCAS and ACOMAS respectively, but all other medical schools here in Texas will use TMDSAS. So residency is important here in Texas because there is a state law that says that no more than 10% of the entering class for the medical and dental schools can be made up of non-Texas residents. We'll go over some stats specific to the out-of-state applicants compared to the overall applicant pool. But it's important to kind of recognize this is one of the reasons why so many out-of-state applicants tend to be hesitant to apply to Texas schools. But hopefully, once you see the stats, you should know that it's really not as daunting as it appears to be. part of the GPA calculations here at TMDSAS, of course, we calculate all of your grades, including courses that have been retaken. So if you got a D- in OChem first semester, and then you got an A+ on that same course when you retook it, we would calculate both of those grades together. So even if you take a course over again, we do calculate all attempts and the grades that you've received at all courses. And then really what we want you to take away from this is that GPA is important, but the trends overall over time are what's really important. And so here we have like a sample transcript of what a school might see. And so you see that here alone, there are about 16, 17 different GPAs calculated. And so we have different semesters being calculated, we have cumulatives, and we have BCPM grades and all that. But really what the schools are looking at is this overall trend. So I came in with a really shaky, dual credit coursework from high school, due to hot my freshman year, and then really kicked it up sophomore and junior year. And then by senior year, I was really fully in the groove and brought my GPA up to where it needed to be. Now, I hope Ryan won't call me out on this totally unrealistic GPA structure here. It's really just to help illuminate how the overall trends really work and how quickly the schools can see those. Because if that 365 overall GPA or that trend that we see in my freshman year, we're actually down in the senior year section, we would be in pretty big trouble to kind of show the schools that I would be ready to handle the rigors of medical school. So one of the first myths and questions that we get is, how did last year's increase in applications affect the TMDSAS admission stats? So just like every other application service, we saw huge growth last application cycle. And so some of the changes that we saw, obviously you see here, we had a huge increase. Every year we've seen a slight increase in applications, and with more and more schools coming online here in Texas, that's to be expected. But this overall jump of 1,260 new applicants this past year was by far historically the largest jump we've seen. And so here you have some of the averages, and we'll actually take a look at how these averages look like in comparison to other cycles. So first off, taking a look at the overall funnel for those that applied, interviewed, were accepted, and then enrolled or matriculated in medical school, we actually see that these grades have actually stayed pretty steady. The accepted pool did see a pretty slight increase of about 0.5 over last application cycle. And since entry year 2021 is not matriculated or enrolled yet, we still don't have that matriculated number. But if you see the relationship between last year's accepted and matriculated pool, we can certainly expect that number to be around a 511. As far as GPA goes, you see a similar trend here. For our accepted group, we actually saw a 0.2 GPA increase. And so that's likely to translate based off of previous year's trends to maybe about a 3.8 or 3.81 GPA average for all of our enrollees for entry year 2021. And again, I know I'm going really quickly through a lot of these data. This is available to you if you go to insidehealtheducation.com. We have a banner up top where you can actually click and view this presentation. So the next question is really, what does the admissions data say about the out-of-state applicants applying to TMDSAS schools? So taking a look at what the out-of-state applicants look like in comparison to the overall pool, here we see the group of out-of-state applicants per application cycle right next to the data that we've already seen of our overall applicants. So we see that there was a comparable increase in our out-of-state applicants last application cycle, but they still represent about 24% of our total applicant pool, which is kind of interesting that it kind of stays steady that way. In fact, last year, our admitted admitted non-Texas applicants made up 11% of all acceptances, 268 applicants there. And 8% of all enrollees and matriculants, which was 143 students. So taking a look at those stats specifically, hey, he's back.
I don't know, should I blame Spectrum for this one?
Right. Yeah, so when we saw the numbers earlier, we saw the trends kind of between accepted and matriculated. Those numbers kind of predict maybe within a 0.1 or 0.2 spectrum. So we do see a slight increase in the average MCAT score for our accepted applicants that are non-Texas residents. And then similarly for GPA, we had about 0.2 increase in GPA, which is quite significant. But in the grand scheme of things, a 1/10 increase, or 1/100th rather, increase in score is really not that large. And we can anticipate that once the matriculated numbers are finalized and school begins this fall for all of our enrollees. Would you like to jump in?
Question. Yeah. So I think we're on question 3. Is that right?
Yeah.
How can I showcase my strengths through my my application? Enrique is going to explain to us holistic review.
Yeah, sorry about that. I set you up. Yeah, so one of the things that we really want you to understand is how holistic review comes into play in your application. Ryan has talked about this on several episodes of the podcast. He has brought on admissions officers who all talk about core competencies and all of the great stuff that's coming out about that work. But really, we're just here to break it down. This model is essentially what the medical schools are seeing and basing their admissions decisions off of. And so really, it's 3 major categories. Your experiences, which assess what your path looks like, what your overall journey traveled has looked like. Your attributes, which take a look at who you are as a person. So that can include, your level of maturity, and in some instances, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, your leadership experiences, your values, and your beliefs. And then everybody's favorite is the metrics, the MCAT score and the GPA. But as we mentioned earlier, the grade trends also plays a huge part in that decision for the metrics. So one of the areas where you can really highlight these different attributes is going to be in your personal biography section in the TMDSAS application. You take all of the activities that you've ever been engaged in since you graduated from high school, whether that may be, 5 years ago, or it might be, however many years ago. Nobody here is judging. We love non-traditional students, and we love students that come straight out of high school and into college and out to professional school. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, each one of your activities will have to be categorized into one of these 8 or 10 different categories. Each activity allows you 300 characters, which we know is a significantly short amount of time. So you really want to be concise in what you have to say. With a lot of the messaging that you share here, obviously you want to discuss what you did. If you were shadowing a doctor or anybody in healthcare, you want to talk about what you learned there, name the physician or whichever healthcare professional you shadowed, and you get 300 characters to do that. Some folks opt to do bullet points, others opt to do a narrative. It's entirely up to you, but use that space to the absolute max because it's very limited space. Now, if there are any meaningful activities or experiences that you engaged in, we do offer you the opportunity to write an additional 500 characters about those. So you can actually select the 3 meaningful experiences that you really want to share with the schools, and include that in that section of the meaningful experiences. This is very similar to what you see in other national application services, but primarily this is probably one of the areas that a lot of applicants trip up on because you totally miss the mark on leveraging those 500 characters. This is your opportunity to speak directly to the admissions committee and say, hey, these are what's meaningful to me, and this is why I'm going to be an amazing doctor.
And often an overlooked, underutilized opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So your statements and essays are really an opportunity for you to showcase who you are. In your medical personal statement, it's the typical one, explain your motivation to seek a career in medicine. And here you really want to use that STAR method where you assess the situation, you look at the task, the action that you took, and the result that came out of it. So a lot of times we've read so many essays where it's like, my grandparents were sick and I didn't like the way that they were treated. And the applicant goes on to talk about how awful the treatment was. We really feel for that situation, but we want to know more about why that impacted you to go on and want to pursue this pathway. So don't get stuck with a situation, don't get stuck with a task, but really focus on the action that you took and the results that you've seen, and explain why that's going to make you a more effective healthcare provider. For the personal characteristics, we mentioned earlier about the attributes that you have and the different skill sets that you have. And so this essay is an opportunity for you to really discuss what you bring to the table, not just to an individual school, but to the overall profession. So take a look at that list of the core competencies that the schools have defined and assess which ones are your strengths, and maybe even talk about those. And don't discount, your experiences, where you came from. Somebody, envision yourself in a team-based learning scenario, like at a gross anatomy tank. You have different folks coming from different walks of life, different places that they may have grown up in. Somebody who's growing up in a rural area is not going to have the same thought process as somebody who grew up in an urban area. And even people who live right next to each other have much different ways of thinking. Think about what makes you unique, and that's what the schools want to see in this essay. And then finally, for the optional essay, as you all know, optional is the new required. This is your opportunity to move the head of the admissions committees and say, hey, take a look at this, or hey, I didn't get a chance to talk about this over here, and I want you to know about this. So anything that wasn't mentioned in your application, this is your opportunity to talk directly to the admissions committees. And then finally, pick the evaluators who are really going to speak to your story and speak to your attributes, because at the end of the day, the evaluators are the ones who are really assessing your suitability for the rigors of this profession, but also corroborate your strengths, your competencies, and the activities that you've incorporated in your application. So really think critically about who this team of evaluators is going to be and what they have to say about your situation. So really, obviously everybody knows I should probably find a physician to write me a letter, or I should get my professor to write me a letter. But don't discount other people kind of on the outside who've been part of your journey, who could really speak to your skills, like a volunteer coordinator, a supervisor, or even a research PI or a professor, who can really speak to a lot of these different core competencies. And so really what you're trying to do here is, say, here are the ways that I'm awesome, and here are the people who agree that these are the ways that make me awesome.
That's right. All right, so for our next question, am I considered a non-traditional applicant? And this is something that has changed over the last couple of years. And Enrique, you can go to the next slide. Most of us are familiar with definitions of non-traditional. Oftentimes it's an applicant who is 25 years old or has taken a break in education. And that's, for any reason, or has unique circumstances such as changing careers, supporting a family. But a couple of years ago, we changed the prompt in the application to allow applicants to self-identify as non-traditional. It's impossible to cover every scenario in exemplars. We get lots of questions about it in the past. And so we thought, well, let's allow applicants to self-identify and then sort of describe why they consider themselves a non-traditional applicant.
Yeah, and we've really heard from the schools where they love to see everybody's responses, because sometimes it's not even the identification of non-traditional, but rather the description could really be really insightful into that student's journey. And also in the instances where somebody is totally not aware about themselves, it could be really telling about why you're defining yourself as non-traditional when you really aren't really on the outside in being non-traditional. And I think the takeaway here is that being non-traditional is not an obstacle for you. It's a huge opportunity. And really, you want to rethink all of your experiences, because that's what the schools want to see. Your experiences are so rich, and you just have to find a pathway to reframe them within the context of pursuing this pathway. So if you ended up, taking the scenic route to join us here at National Premed Day, or if you are taking an enrichment year or a gap year, or if you're building your own pathway, welcome. We're all here to help you. You're not alone. and just really think critically, because you have this huge advantage with life experiences, with a lot of learned opportunities over time that could really be applicable to your application.
Okay. So we have two more questions. And the next is, how does the TMDSAS match work? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that process and who is involved in the match.
Not it.
Do what?
Not it. You can take that.
I don't know. Can I get a lifeline? This
right.
is kind of complicated. But yeah. So right.
I'll take it. I'll explain it. I'm an expert at this anyway.
Yeah, of course.
So the match is we're one of the only states to have a process like this, right? So it is complicated, but thinking about it, like you've got Texas residents, non-Texas residents. Non-Texas residents don't go through the match, so it's solely for Texas residents. We begin making offers on October 15th to both of these populations, but our Texas residents will essentially rank in preference order their the medical schools that they've interviewed at, and then they submit their ranking. The medical schools also submit their ranking for the students or the candidates who have interviewed at their institutions. We put that in the system, and then the system does an algorithm and does this magic, and it spits out the match. And this is typically published. The results are published at the end of February. Actually, beginning of February historically, but last year, because of COVID, it was pushed to the beginning of March, and then we decided to kind of maintain that schedule so that for EY22, it'll also be the end of February, early March.
Yeah, and we actually have a video. Again, you can pull up this this presentation at insidehealtheducation.com. We actually have a match video that goes over different scenarios, so you can see what it looks like if you pre-match in a certain way, or if you go through the match and you don't get accepted anywhere yet, how rolling admissions will work. So that's a really helpful video. And also check out the TMDSAS website that goes over that.
All right. So the big question, why is it important to apply early? And the myth is that you have to apply early, right? That's the well, and even the suggestion that we hear from a lot of folks in the community, the pre-health community, is that it's always better to apply early. And it's highly encouraged. And we're going to talk a little bit about this on the next slide as well. But TMDSAS application is just the first step, and so there's you can still submit your letters of evaluation, your test scores, transcripts after submitting your application. And many schools will send secondary invitations only after receiving the TMDSAS application. So that prompts the schools to send the secondary, which is a whole other process that can take time. The longer you wait, the less time you have to maximize interview date availability. And really, that's the key takeaway here. So we get asked, Enrique, we get asked every day by applicants, when should I apply? What's the magic date? And really, in fact, you can go ahead and go to the next slide and take a look at the graph.
Yeah, so here what we're outlining is the earliest date you could submit, which would have been May 17th. And we've included the 2 to 4 weeks. We put the worst case scenario of a 4-week processing time at TMDSAS to get it to the schools. And then in green, you actually see the amount of time that the schools have, not just to review your application, but to also extend interview invites. Here in Texas, interviews will typically start around early to mid-August. And so submitting in July, typically say, by July 4th, get your application in. Because that puts your application at the school's desk by early August, which is perfect timing for the very first interview dates. Now, the TMDSAS application actually doesn't close until November 1st this year. Now, if you do submit at that time, there is time still to get an interview date, but you'll notice that there are much fewer spots available, much shorter time to get a callback, to even get reviewed by the schools. The schools do recognize that applicants are submitting at the deadline. So, if they wanted the applications to be submitted earlier, they would have moved the deadline earlier. But it really does get much more competitive at that point because there are so many fewer spots available for interview dates. So this is why we really want to help you to make sure that you balance putting in a really well thought out, complete application, make sure that your CASPers are submitted for the schools that require them, secondaries that are submitted by the schools that require them, and just have a full, complete application as early as possible.
All right, so the final question, what resources are there if I'm applying to Texas schools? So a huge resource that we have worked for quite actually a couple of years on in developing content that was recently launched back in April as Inside Health Education, our newsroom. And so Inside Health Education is for you all, it's for the pre-health community. Again, our mission, we want you to become a pre-health insider. And it's there to provide accurate and helpful educational resources about the pre-health journey. It's targeted support to help you make the best decisions for your journey and feedback directly from the professional schools, pre-health advisors, and professional organizations. And so we're meeting with these folks. We meet with our member institutions, and they feed us all kinds of information to have there in the newsroom, in the Inside Health Education newsroom. And so it's an incredible resource for you all. And so go and just immerse yourself in the experience and then give us feedback. Enrique, I think there's also a way to provide feedback on there as well.
Right. Absolutely. And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, you are not alone in the process. There are support communities available through TMDSAS in the TMDSAS Hub and the TMDSAS Non-Traditional Applicants groups. And so what we do here is we really want to foster the collaboration that Dr. Gray is always talking about. We want to build support and really share a lot of the success stories to get you along the road to professional school. So right now, that group is extremely busy with so many questions about the application minutia, and we in turn can actually take that feedback and help make sure that all of our resources are addressing the questions that you all have, which is fantastic because it works both ways. And then finally, as many of you know, Inside Health Education podcast is actually part of the MedEd Media family. And so we're really happy to be able to be here and continue this partnership with MedEd Media and MAP. And a new resource that we actually created in this past year is the Courage Session Q&A, which is a live Q&A session that we have streamed to Facebook. So we actually bring on guests from our member institutions, from professional organizations, to talk about how this journey has been impacted by COVID and really what this future is going to look like for you as the applicant. And so any recordings of these Courage sessions are available on our YouTube channel and also via our podcast, Inside Health Education. All right, we made it. And we have a really awesome link farm with all of the links to everything we talked about here. If you want to hold up your camera phone to this QR code, and it takes you to that page, and we are ready for your questions.
Oh, some good questions here. So here's an interesting one with Academic Fresh Start, which is unique to the Texas Medical and Dental School Application Service, the Texas Health Education System service. What does that look like on TMDSAS? Do students enter everything, even pre-Fresh Start, or is it just post-Fresh Start and everything else is ignored? What does that look like?
Yeah, so you've actually got to enter in your entire academic history, your post-secondary academic history. So if it appears in your transcripts, regardless of whether or not it's covered under the provision of Academic Fresh Start, you'll want to put it in your application. And then one of our academic advisors or applicant liaisons will take a look at your coursework, and then they will then remove those courses from your record. But we'll also need copies of your official transcripts as well. And so if you're applying under Academic Fresh Start, you'll want to go ahead and have those transcripts sent to us, because it takes 2 to 4 weeks for those to be received by our office. So
yeah, awesome. Baylor, now that it's part of TMDSAS, is it going to follow the same 10% rule like public schools do, or no, because they're still private?
They do have sort of their a percentage that they're sort of mandated to stay around, which is around 85%, and so not 10%, but probably somewhere between 10 and 15%.
Yeah, and we actually discussed that. We had a courage session with Baylor College of Medicine when they joined TMDSAS a couple of months ago.
Awesome. Okay. Someone mentioned a minute ago with the timeline slide, the processing time for TMDSAS. Now, I was under the assumption that the kind of messaging from TMDSAS is that the verification process happens kind of in parallel with everything else, and the application isn't held like AMCAS or COMAS holds it to verify before sending it out to schools. But it sounds like there's still something happening before it's going out to schools. Talk about that.
Yeah, so there's a processing, a time for processing that typically, we get a lot of applications, and so like MCAS, it takes 2 to 4 weeks for our staff to kind of go through those applications, but they look over the academic history, they look over the pretty much the entire application to make sure that it follows certain parameters and the certification page. And so they're also, what's different with TMDSAS is we do residency determinations for all of our applicants, and that is unique. And so quite a few of our applicants will have to go through a verification process with residency. And then the other thing that we do is coursework determinations. And so our applicant liaisons will look at every entry of coursework to make sure that it's coded correctly. And they determine which courses will be included in the BCPM or courses that meet the requirement for medical school and which ones don't. And so it's a very lengthy process. And so once we've done that, we send it off to the medical schools, and then several months later, once applicants are invited to interview, they are then requested to send transcripts to TMDSAS, and then we begin the verification of coursework, or we call it validation of coursework to those transcripts.
Okay.
And I think something to also note is that throughout the cycle, after you submit, your MCAT scores are still coming in, and that's getting processed and sent over to the schools. When new semesters finish, like summer 1, summer 2, the fall semester, we're still in the middle of the application cycle. So you update those grades on the application as well, and then they still go through that processing and update the school. So the schools are constantly hearing from TMDSAS about all the updates that there are to the application. So don't be afraid that you have to wait until your MCAT scores come in, or that you have to wait till your letters come in. Submit that primary application, because that's really the catalyst that triggers everything else that happens.
Yeah. Jason asks, what are some examples that come to mind when it comes to schools considering, quote, strong ties to Texas as a non-resident applicant? You can see from his profile picture, he's a Utah resident, but is very interested in TMDSAS going to a Texas medical school.
Yeah.
Take this one, or...
Yeah, well, I'm sort of thinking through it. So what are some examples that come to mind when it comes to schools considering strong ties with Texas? Okay, I see. Yeah, I don't know, Enrique, do you...
Yeah, I think it's really just understanding Texas. We're all up in our own heads, but at the same time, we really want to, the way that the schools are shaped, their mission statements really have a lot to do with their local communities.
Yeah.
So if you are looking to apply to a Texas school, you really have to understand what that school's mission is and understand what the values are. For example, Texas A&M has a notoriously well-established, maybe not notoriously, but a very well-established set of core values, the Aggie values, that really come into play in their application. So if you don't explicitly talk about those in their secondary application, it really just shows that you haven't done your homework about that school, and you really don't connect with their mission. So I think what the schools are really looking for is a good mission fit, first and foremost. And when you have somebody applying from out of state, you really need to understand not just the culture of that region, but also understand what the schools are looking for.
Yeah. Is there a way for students to go play? Or do you guys discourage people from creating an account and going and opening an application just so they can understand what's in there for next year?
No, not at all. I mean, we get a huge number of people who do just that, and a lot of our advisors and people across the state do it. So highly encouraged, actually.
Yeah. You talked about the huge influx of applications last year. Now, there was a lot of messaging around the Fauci effect and all of that, which just doesn't make sense when you look at what it takes for a pre-med to actually apply to medical school. My assumption is, and I don't know if you've done any kind of research on the back end, my assumption is that was just a lot of people who were going to apply this year and saw, oh, maybe the application process will be easier because schools are going to take it easier, MCAT wise or activity wise. So I'm just going to go ahead and try this year. Do you think numbers will just come back down to normal this year?
Well,
on what we're seeing.
I think there are two answers here, and I know which way Matthew's going, so I'll let you answer that question. But we actually took a look at this new applicant pool that was huge, because we were really concerned that it affected vulnerable populations like underrepresented students, non-traditional students, students that come from low socioeconomic situations, and we actually saw that the growth was across the board.
Yeah.
And that included reapplicants, because our first thought was the Fauci effect doesn't mean that somebody's going to wake up and say, oh, I've already got my 528 MCAT score, my 4.0 with all my prereqs, and I'm going to apply this year. Everybody here knows that that's not true. It takes years to put together an application. And so we really took a look and kind of were assessing it, but the growth was just across the board with a lot of different populations, which was really interesting.
Yeah, we saw growth with our veterinary applicants, our dental applicants as well. And but yeah, I think at this point it's speculation. We're beginning a study in September. Just after September 1st, we'll begin doing research on this very topic. And I know that our colleagues out at AAMC and MCAS are going to be doing the same. We're all trying to figure out what happened here, and so but again, just for EY 22, we're already seeing some incredible growth there too. And so we allowed submissions of the application beginning May 17th. So when you compare the number of available days of submission to last year, we're actually getting more apps even this year than last year. And so who knows? It could just be that this is, we kind of thought there'd be a regression to the mean this year, but we'll have to wait and see. June is when we get about a quarter of our apps in. So I think probably end of June, early July, we'll kind of know what the story is for this year. So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
I had one other amazing question. Oh, did any of your member institutions waive the MCAT last year?
No, we did not. There was some discussion about it, but as Enrique said, we did some studies and found that it really didn't impact vulnerable populations the way that we thought, and so they went ahead and all required it for last year.
All right, I was hoping TMDSAS could do some good research in 4 years on the effects of that, but won't be coming out of TMDSAS. Hopefully, it comes out of some other schools. Matthew Meeks, Enrique Hasso, thank you so much for your wisdom, for hopefully just continuing to do better with TMDSAS compared to the other application services, making it just cheaper and just a better experience overall for students applying to Texas schools.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your wisdom. And again, everyone else, you can continue to get some more information by becoming a pre-health insider at InsideHealthEducation.com. Gentlemen, I appreciate your time and look forward to speaking to you National Pre-Med Day 2022. So
thank you.
You're already
Thank
slotted.
You so much.
Have
awesome.
a great day, gentlemen.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next up, we have another session coming your way with Rachel. I thought Leanne was going to be here. Are you here? Maybe. Maybe not. Hello, I hear you. Not anymore. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties as we're playing this game. our next session. Hello.
Hey, yeah, Leanne is still wrapping up with Hunter, so I thought I'd come in and cover for her. I'm really excited about this session anyway. Our good friend Sabina, who some of you may remember from last year because she did What is Med School Really Like? She was on that panel. This time she's back wearing another hat. She's here in her role as the executive director of MedPride. I think also known, the full name I believe is MSPA, Medical Student Pride Alliance. I had to do the letters there to be sure I have right. And she's got a colleague here with her, Daniel Parker. So we're excited to hear from both of them. I'm going to bring you guys on stream. And Daniel, I might mute you. No, you're good. Okay. Yeah, so I'm so thrilled that you guys are here today. Topic today is applying to medical school as an Alphabet Mafia applicant and an LGBTQ TIA plus applicant. There's a lot of different ways to say this, but I love that we get to dig into this important topic. It's something that comes up a lot, so I'm excited to hear what you guys have to offer. And I'll hop off screen since you guys can keep each other company and run the show, but I'll be in the background to help you, and so will my colleague Leanne.
Great, thank you for having us. We're super stoked to be here. All right.
Okay.
Let us share our screen.
Sorry, give me one moment.
That's all right.
Screen sharing can take a little while sometimes.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just introduce us while we get that set up. So everyone, thank you for being here. I am Sabina, and I'm the Executive Director of Medical Student Pride Alliance. And I'm joined here with Daniel, who's my colleague and co-director of mentorship with Medical Student Pride Alliance. And we're a group of med students who, we do a lot of work for and by medical students to support queer med students who are in med school. And we're also doing a lot of work on the other side, helping pre-meds get into medical school. And so that's why we're here today, giving you this sort of guide and intro into applying to medical school as a queer applicant. So yay, slides are up. Sweet. So we'll get started with that. Yeah.
All right. So, hello, everyone. I'm Daniel. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am a now fourth-year medical student at Florida Atlantic University in South Florida, and I am the MSPA co-director for mentorship.
Nice. Yeah. And I'm an MS3 now, I guess. I think a lot of you have been following me for a while, and so I'm now officially a third-year medical student, which is kind of terrifying. And I'm at the University of Pittsburgh.
So this is just a long jargon slide, but essentially we have no disclosures financially. And today we are speaking from our own experiences, as well as the experience of those we know. And experiences with our admissions committees at our schools. However, we are presenting as LGBTQ plus medical students. We are not presenting as representatives of our medical schools or their admissions committees. And we are not identifying with any institutions for the remainder of this presentation. So today we're basically just going to talk quickly about MSPA, and then we're going to talk about the actual application to medical school and specifically components of it relevant to being an LGBTQ plus applicant, and then really spend the bulk of our time talking with everyone here about what they want to know.
Yeah, so I sort of introed MSPA a little bit before, but this is MSPA. We are an activist and social organization. We were founded in 2018 by a group of medical students, and we've since grown to have almost 100 chapters now. And our whole goal is to empower sexual and gender minority medical students and allies, help the pipeline, help increase the pipeline by bringing pre-meds like yourselves up into medical school and beyond. And our chapters, you can see, are pretty extensive across the country. And we do a lot of advocacy work to eliminate discriminatory policies, both in medical education and across the country in policies. And we address health disparities with our medical students and leaders.
So now we're going to get into the bread and butter of actually applying to medical school. We took portions of this from a pre-med webinar, which we're going to talk about at the end, that we offer through MSPA. And so we're just going to talk about some highlights of the application, because I'm sure you are getting plenty of that throughout the day. So when you apply to medical school, really the components that you're being evaluated on, as I'm sure you know, are your character, your academics and your testing, of course, your service, research, exposure to medicine, and leadership. And so the first one of those that we decided to speak about today is service. When you're applying to medical school as an LGBTQ plus applicant, the question we get all the time is, should I be out in my application? How do I approach that? Where do I do it? So there are different ways to approach it depending on your experiences, and service is like really one way where you can showcase parts of your identity in your application by showing what's passionate to you, what's close to you. And this is really a great option of infusing parts of who you are throughout your application that you feel are important for an admissions committee to know, but in a more experienced way rather than directly talking about it.
Yeah, and this doesn't necessarily, so like, you know, when I was applying, I was very much out, and I made that conscious decision, which we can talk about later. But my like services weren't necessarily queer or LGBTQ plus oriented. I had some like LGBTQ medical education research that I'd done, but my services were reflective of myself. And so, you know, don't fret and don't feel like your whole application has to be like, oh, I'm queer, I'm applying to med school, like my whole app has to be queer, because that's like me and that's who I am. You know, that's fine if that's how you choose to go about it, but like don't fret if your application is not you know, all rainbows the whole way through.
Yeah, absolutely. I also didn't have any LGBTQ plus service on my application at the time. And you know, kind of what Sabina, going off of what Sabina is saying, is you don't need everything to be a successful applicant to medical school. You just need to be an authentic person who shows dedication in these different areas, but don't get caught up in the weeds of doing everything.
Cool. So leadership, I mean, I'm sure y'all have heard a lot about this throughout the day and as you've been gearing up to apply to medical school, but obviously quality over quantity. This can fit under many categories, and it can, you know, it can be related to medicine or not related to medicine. But regardless, make sure that what you reflect as leadership experiences on your application or things that you like feel comfortable talking about, because you'll likely be asked about it. So like, for example, in my interviews, I didn't have any leadership in like anything queer related, but I, in my application, was very much like, I'm going into medical school because I want to make a difference for queer patients in reproductive health, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of my leadership things came from event planning and teaching and, you know, things that weren't really even healthcare related, but like were related to components of myself that I was really passionate about and proud of. And so I always looped that back into my why, which for me happened to relate directly to my identity as a gay applicant. And again, if that's not like your why, then that's totally all right, obviously. But speaking to those of you whose why it's intertwined with, you know, if you're on the interview trail or if you're writing essays and you're looking for ways to sort of blend your leadership and services into my why as a gay applicant or as a queer applicant, you know, leadership is a really good place, because you can be like with teaching, for example, it's like I learned how to hone my communication skills, which will make me like a great eventual I can't talk. Will make me a great eventual physician practicing and working with my queer patients, because I'll be able to communicate with them both through personal experience and through the experiences I've gained as like a teacher and as a leader. So yeah, just always keep in mind that there are ways to connect everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And also something that someone once gave me advice about applications, and I think it's so great, so I just wanted to share it here on this slide, is when you're writing your application to something and you're writing these description of these experiences, and you only have so much that you can say, rather than just describing what an organization is or what it does or what role you had, try and really hone in on the impact that your contributions had to that organization or whatever it may be. Because throughout your application, you want to tell a story of who you are and what's important to you and the value that you add as well. So don't be afraid to showcase it in that way. So
go for it.
Character. So character, this is really going to be the parts of the application that are going to show the most of who you are. It's going to be your letters of recommendation and your personal writing, like I just spoke about. And you really want to try and reflect and give a sense of what defines who you are and how do you show that to someone on paper, and like what qualities and experiences that you've had and that represent you are aligned with the pursuit to become a physician. Tailor it towards that parts of your identity that are important to you and have guided you towards this career path are so important and should be known to someone who's going to accept you to medical school, because you want to align with what they value for their institution and what you value for your education. And interviews are really going to be the greatest chance to talk about this and show more about who you are.
Yep. Perfect. Experiences. Yeah. So this kind of like ties into services a little bit in terms of like where you would talk about those things on the application. But you don't have to like laundry list everything that you've ever done in the history of your academic career, right? Like tailor the things that speak most to your mission and your goals as a future physician, and include those on your application. And again, in your little blurbs that you write about the experiences, you know, you can do more than just talking about like, I moved patients from X to Y spot in the hospital, and I like, you know, taught students this. You can talk a lot more about how those experiences were enriching for you, even in the little bit of characters that you get. And this is like a really good way, again, to tie in how it all fits into your why. So when I was talking earlier about teaching and tying it into like communication, like this is where I would do that. I'd put like one sentence in that was like, you know, as a future physician who plans to work with underserved and underrepresented patients, the communication skills I gained from teaching like helped me XYZ, things like that. So make sure to like find a balance between like being humble and not like overtly bragging about all the great stuff that y'all have done, but also like celebrating yourself and being proud of all the work that you've done and ready to take it to the next level in med school.
Definitely. Yeah. Applications are not the time to be coy. You want to broadcast to the world everything you've worked so hard to do. So really the biggest question that at least I've gotten in my experiences with LGBTQ plus pre-medical students and even medical students talking about residency applications is, should I be out in my personal statement? Now, your personal statement has, you know, goals as to what it should accomplish. You want to engage the reader from the start. You want to really be painting a picture of who you are and your path to today, trying to get into medical school. And this is a really unique opportunity for the only extended time on your application to showcase your voice and your personality to the reader and really give an idea of who you are. And it is a great opportunity if you want to be out in your applications and you feel safe being out in your applications and it's important to you to discuss elements of your identity and the role that those played, if they played a role towards your trajectory to medicine. Because if being LGBTQ plus is one of the driving factors or forces that's brought you to medicine, it should be in your personal statement, because you want to paint the picture and tell the story of how you got here today and what's important to you, and what parts of who you are you want to bring out in your profession. And so it's a really unique decision. I don't tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do, but it is a really great opportunity on the application to kind of bring forth parts of yourself that are important to you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of times the question that I get is like, what if the person reading my application is super crusty and just like isn't for the queer community and all of that? And hopefully that's not the case. And I struggled a lot with this personally when I was applying, because I had many advisors tell me not to be out. And in like my first line of my personal statement, or maybe like third line, it's like, I am a Black gay woman. And so many people were very turned away from that in terms of people I turned to for advice on these applications. And the reason was, this is the first thing people are going to read about you and see in your application. And, if they're not, if they're anti-LGBTQ or whatever, then like your essay is going to be like turned away. And I was like, I honestly don't want to go to a school that would do that, right? So to me, it was self-selective, and it helped me. If I got an interview somewhere, if I got a secondary from somewhere, then I was like, okay, cool, I like passed, or rather, they passed my like first vibe check, essentially. Because if they're going to turn you away for that, then like, as somebody who wants to be queer and out and proud at your school and do that kind of work, that's not really a place that might be the most productive for you to do that in. But like Daniel said, it's a completely personal decision, and not something that anybody can tell you to do or not to do.
Absolutely. And this, like, kind of going off of what Sabina just spoke about, if being queer or any other part of your identity is really important to you to be involved in your profession and your medical school experience, you want to do stuff, be involved in the LGBTQ plus community around your medical school, you're passionate about LGBTQ plus health, being out in your application is a great tool if that's what you're looking for, because it allows you to understand where is going to be supportive of that, so just a consideration. But again, that's if that is your choice. So on the note of considerations, so as far as choosing where to apply, this is probably the other biggest question I always hear. Like, how did you figure out which medical schools aligned with your personal values and felt supportive of your identity? And something on pre-med panels previously that I've heard many people talk about using just sort of like as a general screening idea is geographic location. Local environment and local culture are going to play a huge part into the community motivations and involvements and values of institutions, particularly like medical schools, institutions that are serving the community in that area. So the Human Rights Campaign has this thing called Municipal Equality Index. It's not for every area. It's mostly like large towns and cities. But basically they do a screening of the local policies and different elements of the local community in different places like Miami or Pittsburgh, and give a score as to how that local environment supports the LGBTQ plus community. And it's a great way to kind of get a general sense of that local environment. Sabina, if you want to talk about the report card.
Yeah, so this year, actually last month, I think, MSPA launched the LGBTQ plus medical school report card. And for those of you who aren't familiar, this was a project that was largely based off of the White Coats for Black Lives report card that was published a couple of years ago. And so in our survey, we sent around a survey to students across the country at med schools and asked them to report back on certain criteria related to being an LGBTQ plus student at that med school. And then we collated all the information and put it into a report card. And so this is like a really great tool that pre-meds have since been asking for since we launched it, and also using as a way to gauge what school would be a great fit for them, specifically regarding their identity. And it doesn't have all of the schools. This is only version 1. We're hoping to obviously expand the list in the future, but it's like a pretty decent list of popular school options. And so a really easy free resource for all of y'all to use. You can go to this link here. It's also like on our social media pages and everything. And it'll open up a PDF with extensive detail on how we collected the information, how we chose what to include, and then at the end, you'll see the actual report card. And it reads exactly like a report card. So, it'll say University of Pittsburgh, overall rating, whatever it is, and then the individual categories. So you can see where some schools might do better than others. And it's all data gathered specifically from students. So this is a good way to gauge like how students feel as members of the LGBTQ plus community at their school. And yeah, so I think that's a really good resource as well. What else do we have on here? Yeah, so resources regarding DEI efforts, commitments, and those are usually available from medical schools, and you can read those on their websites. I do think like something to keep in mind is like schools will post what they post on their website, right? Because they like want you to see it. And I think the best way to really get a gauge and again a vibe check is to talk to students. And so like the last tab on here is contact admissions offices to get connected with LGBTQ plus students. And so that's a really great way. I think another great way that isn't talked about often enough is using social media. And that's such a fantastic way to get into contact with students. Maybe you don't know somebody from a specific school, but if you're on Twitter or if you're on Instagram and you know somebody who might know somebody, you can even ask, like, I might not, you might be interested in a school that's not University of Pittsburgh, but if you reach out to me, like, do you know anybody at this school who I could talk to? I might know, or I probably will know someone. Another great resource is like MSPA, right? Like we have pre-meds emailing us or sliding into our DMs all the time, asking us like, do you know somebody at this school who I could talk to? I'm really interested in applying or hearing more about the school and what it's like to be a member of the LGBTQ community and study there. And we like reach out and help connect you with that person because we know how important it is to get that information directly from somebody who's living it in that moment.
Absolutely. And something that someone else mentioned from now graduated MSPA leadership team member said, you can ask, especially in interview, like once you're at interviews and more in personal contact with the schools, ask about their education actually built into the curriculum around social determinants of health, race, LGBTQ plus community, LGBTQ plus relevant health issues. How is this actually incorporated into what you're teaching students? Like that really sings to how essential the institution believes that to be as what they offer to the community and what they're teaching their students. So just something to keep in mind.
For sure.
Okay, so we wanted to leave as much time as possible for questions because we tried to predict as much as we could, but we would love to help in any way we can.
Nice question. So the question is, have you dealt with any homophobia at your institution? If so, how did you handle it? All right, starting off strong.
I can go first, you can go first.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I have not dealt with any homophobia from my institution at all or at my institution. However, I have experienced unfortunate situations in the clinical setting. I'm a fourth-year medical student. I've been in hospitals for over the last year, every day, pretty much. And I have had instances occur, unfortunately, with staff at hospitals and patients and so on. And I don't think there's any one best way to handle it. I think that is really so dependent on how it affects you, first of all, and what happened, and also if it was related to your institution or not. You know, my school, when things like this have happened, I go to a small school, so there's personal connections with everyone. The deans know all the students. So I would just, whenever something like this happened or I felt uncomfortable or anything, I would just email a dean of the school and ask them, like, this happened, and how should I approach this? Like, it's not the school, it's the hospital. And they were incredibly supportive and took the burden off of me and handled it on their accord and removed me from it. And it was very supportive, and I am very grateful for that.
Yeah, so I haven't, similarly to Daniel, I haven't dealt with any sort of homophobia directed against me specifically, or anything overt, thankfully, at my institution. I also haven't stepped foot in the clinical setting. I start in 2 weeks, so can't speak from that experience. But something that I have experienced a lot is catching things, small things or large things in the curriculum that are probably not intentional negative comments about the LGBTQ plus community, but that can be harmful in terms of what we're teaching our medical students, and can be hurtful to people who identify within the community. And so seeing those is never fun, obviously, but it's also an opportunity for me and like my colleagues to make a difference for those coming up behind us. And so we always email the necessary parties to make sure that the slide or the lecture or whatever is changed for the future, and provide resources, which, kind of isn't so great as like a student to have to do that extra work, but obviously we just want to make a difference for the future med students coming up behind us, and we don't want them to like experience the same thing that we had to experience sitting there listening to that. Any other questions?
Okay, so this one is, could it be argued that former sex workers would be viewed as a minority to at last amplify in order to destigmatize in our society?
I'll have to reread this question.
Me too. Me too.
Okay, I think I understand what this is saying. So, I'm very much pro what you're saying here. I haven't talked to anybody specifically about like how this plays a role in applying as a medical or as a pre-medical student to medical school. But I think there's a lot of politics around the specific definitions that AMC used to define underrepresented and minority in medical school, in medical school. So, I don't know if like it would necessarily fall under that category of URM specifically, but minority in terms of like, are you represented related to the physicians that will be taking care of you? Like probably, yeah. And I think everything that we have said here in related to choosing to be out in your application, et cetera, plays a role as well for sex work too. If you choose to include that, then go for it. Like that's part of who you are. Ooh, another question. Advice for pre-med LGBTQIA students, something you know now that you wish you had known when you applied.
That was a good question. That is a good question. I feel in a positive way, that's something I wish I knew at the time that I know now, is being queer in other parts of my identity and being of service to communities who I'm passionate about serving, and became much more important to me and central to what I value and what I want to do in medical school. It really didn't happen before that. So I would say that it's honestly like a great feeling to learn a set of skills and know that you're having this privilege of this education and also this role in society that is so valued and important and has such opportunities to impact people. And in that process, you can become passionate about using that in ways that you didn't think about before. So, identity is so important and it's so sensitive and it's so personal, but I think it's an exciting thing to explore parts of who you are in medical school. And I didn't expect that to happen. I thought I would just be studying and crying, but which I'm doing both frequently, but I'm also enjoying.
That's so funny. I currently feel that very strongly. No, but for sure, there are so many things that I wish I'd known coming in, specifically as a gay medical student, that I now know. And I think one of the things that shouldn't necessarily deter anybody, but that did hit me harder than I thought it would, was just like the amount of work that I've had to put in. Like I was talking about before, emails and stuff like that, just to like make small differences. And that's like the hill that I have chosen to die on. Like I am so passionate about improving medical education that I'm like very quick to email anybody if I see anything that needs an improvement. So a burden that I have taken on myself to deal with. And I think that's the case for any minority student in medical school, is just the minority tax of it that I didn't know coming into medical school. But on the flip side of that, I have found such a great community at both my school and nationally through MSPA and through social media of queer students that I just love being a part of and having access to. And we all, talk a lot about successes and struggles that we've had both in the clinical and preclinical setting. And that's been so amazing and wasn't something that I knew to expect or have access to coming into medical school, because up until this point, I really haven't had that community at any of my academic steps to get into medical school. And so having that support has been really great and such a great resource to tackle all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to be a shameless plug on this question, but kind of like Sabina's talking about, I relatively recently got involved with MSPA, and this is not shameless, but I so wish that I had known about it earlier. I've met so many incredible and inspiring queer students, and it really has been so fulfilling. And having that network, even though it's not like right next to me, I can only imagine how incredible that would have been for all 4 years. So seek out those chances to connect with other people who understand what you're going through, because it is a stressful and challenging journey, to be honest, but it's very rewarding.
Yeah, and chances are that like if you have something that you want to tackle at your school, for example, getting pronoun badges, if you connect with somebody on social media or like within your own community, like chances are that they know somebody or they themselves have tackled it, and can connect you with the resources to help get that done. So that's like another something that I didn't really expect, but has been so wonderful to have access to through our organization and social media and local community.
Are there any other questions?
Hi guys, I'm just looking through. Here's somebody, I asked them if they had any general med school questions for you guys. Here's one.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, thank you. What specialties are you both considering? Also, sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses, so I'm getting so close. Also, any general advice for incoming medical students?
I can read the next response if you want.
It's fine.
How about you start?
So I am applying to anesthesiology with plan to pursue critical care medicine. As far as the first question, any general advice for incoming medical students? Relax before you start. Like, do not try to learn anything. Do not try to improve anything. Day one, you're going to be like, I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to. It's just, there's nothing you can do more effectively to like work-wise that's worth it versus just like taking the time to be present with the people you love and do stuff you enjoy and relax and get into a good, healthy mind space before you start.
Yeah, I completely agree with that advice. On the advice topic, I'll circle back to the first question, but I think in addition to relaxing the summer before, once you get to med school, you're going to be completely overwhelmed with advice and resources and all of that. And I think if you can find, you know, an upperclassman that you either know prior to coming into the med school or that you just like vibes really well with, I keep using the word vibe, I'm really sorry, but like that you just like connected really well with during orientation or whatever, which might be a little harder in the virtual world. But regardless, if you can find somebody either at your school or not who's an upperclassman that you can talk to, I think that was super helpful for me because I was able to sort of triage all of the information that I was getting and focus on like what I wanted to try out first as a medical student in my first semester. And you're going to go through so many different iterations of how you study. Don't let that freak you out. Don't let how others are studying freak you out. You know, some people step into med school like already having memorized first aid, which is like ridiculous. Like, please don't buy it yet.
Do
like,
not buy first aid before the second year.
You don't need it.
Period.
Like, don't think about STEP, which, you know, it's pass fail for y'all now, so like that's dope. But like, please don't worry about it, and don't be like frightened by the people who are like super intense. Like, right? Like, it's totally, I'm super chill. Like, I think I'm type A, but I'm also like more chill in terms of studies because I had like my focuses were like on so many other things, and so you know, don't worry about it. Have a good time if you can in med school. Connect with really great people. What specialty am I interested in? I haven't done clerkships yet. However, that being said, I'm like 98% positive I'll be applying into OBGYN. And I am really excited to do that. I still have 2 years left, but I'm really excited to eventually apply into that.
Just further advice, since we're coming towards the end, this is pretty niche, but look for a pass-fail medical school during the first 2 years.
Oh my gosh,
and do not like ask them if they rank you or if it's actually pass-fail, because it'll be like pass-fail or actually pass-fail. Because on that like vein of finding support from other students and upperclassmen and people in your class, like a pass-fail medical school, it creates such a more community-driven environment amongst the students because you're not competing with each other. You know, my class is like, we share everything, even though we're now graded and blatantly competing against each other. Like, we still share everything because we're just so used to it. And there's not this sense ever on rotations or anything that we are one against another. And I think that has been such a huge help to me throughout this process. Yeah,
I agree completely. Also, just like in terms of stress relief, like the stress of, or the lack of stress in pass fail is so nice. Cannot emphasize enough. Do we want to, let's talk about the pre-med webinar?
Yes.
And we can continue to field questions, but we're just going to jump on here and talk about this. So last year we hosted our first pre-med webinar, which was a huge success and was an opportunity for pre-meds to join in and hear directly from members of MSPA and of all like walks of life and identity, and it was great. And so this year we decided to host it again. It'll be on June 7th in a couple of weeks at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Is that right? That is right.
Yep. That's right.
And we are, it's going to be students again, but this year we're bringing on people from the admissions committee. I think it's either going to be one or two, definitely one for sure. And so that'll give students an opportunity to directly hear from adcoms about anything that they have questions about. And so if you want to sign up, you can use the short URL, or you can scan the QR code with your phone, and that should take you directly to the Google form. And we'll send out the Zoom information closer to the date to those who have RSVP'd.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much for coming on. This was awesome. Good conversations, some hard questions, but it's good to talk about it. So
yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. And for anyone who has any other questions, my email is just daniel.parker@MedPride. You can go onto the MedPride website and see Sabina front and center at the top. Her email's there as well, and her Twitter. And then you can find me under mentorship. And anyone, please, with any other questions or wanting to get connected with anyone, please reach out to us.
Yeah. Yep.
Great. Thank you guys so much, and have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Okay, I think I'm going to be kicking everybody off here because we are temporarily going to be heading over to the Blue Room only. We're doing a all-in session. Dr. Layla Harrison is going to be talking about how is COVID affecting admissions. So if you want to check out her talk, head on over to the Blue Room. You can find that at nationalpremedday.com. The blue stream, I think, is right at the top, or map.tv, and you'll find it there. So we are just going to pause this channel for now, but we will be back on, let me tell you what time. We will be back on here at 5:15 p.m. Eastern time. Rodalyn Joseph is a physician assistant, and she's going to be coming on and talking about the top 10 pre-PA FAQs. So we will see you guys soon. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being patient. We are just having a few technical difficulties on the back end. Somebody was just telling me I should get on and do some tap dancing, but I don't think I can do that. Just hold on one second. Bear with me a moment. I feel like I need some music or something. Hold on. Has everybody entered the giveaway? We're going to announce that after this session, so get posting to Insta.
Hi, friends.
Hi.
Can you take away that overlay, Leanne, so they can see my
Yep.
little face?
I think that might be him calling really quickly, so hold on one second.
Okay. Hi, guys. Please bear with. Wait, stop touching the computer, Leanne. Okay. You guys are going to start thinking that I'm the tech curse, but I swear what happens is that there's a tech issue, and then they call me and say, will you come talk to the students? I'm not causing it. So Brian Torres, who is supposed to do from Hood to MD, I believe he's still coming, but I think Leanne's talking to him right now to get it clarified. So hopefully we're going to have that session, and he can tell you his experience. I did my pre-meeting with him a couple days ago, and aside from being super charmed, I just was so blown away at how much stuff he's been through and how persevering he was. I don't think I could possibly do justice to the story, so I'm not going to try to do it myself. But what I will do is just make sure that if you've got any general questions that we're answering them. Let's turn off this banner about the old thing. Where's that banner? Can add that. So it's supposed to be Hood from Hood to MD with Brian Torres now for our last session of the day in this room. Let's check comments and see what's going on. 3Ds, determination, drive, dedication. I love it. The man, the myth, the legend, Brian Torres. I hope he's coming, man. He's so cool. Si se puedo. Si se pudo. I was starting to say si se puede, but you did that one in past tense. Is it pudo? Pudo. Oh, no, I forget where the accent goes. Si se puede. I could do that one. Is the giveaway supposed to be on our story or as a feed post? We will accept either, as long as we're tagged so we can find it. It's cool. So yeah. And I don't know if Boomer's here. There was a question poor Boomer asked like 5 times earlier, and we haven't answered it yet.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. Give us
Brian's
an update.
coming on. I just sent him the link. He'll probably pop on in a minute. So he is coming.
All right. Well, I won't dig too deep into other questions then.
No. What about your jokes?
Oh, yeah. You guys, do you want some really bad
I don't know.
jokes?
I said that somebody said I should tap dance, and they were like, that would be fun. No.
The optimist sees the glass half full. The pessimist sees the glass half empty. The chemist sees the glass completely full, half with liquid and half with air. A photon checks into his hotel. He's asked if he needs any help with luggage, and he says, no thanks, I'm traveling light.
Okay.
Brian's here. You are saving the students from my horrible bad jokes. I'm going to do one more while you catch your breath.
Do it.
Okay. Where do amino acids go for worship? The Sistine Chapel. Love it. Okay.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I will.
Okay,
Thanks,
perfect.
guys,
Hold
for
on.
your patience.
Yeah, take your time and get organized, Brian.
Yeah. Well, I'll just do a quick intro anyways. That'll give you 30 seconds. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm ready when you guys are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to Brian Torres today with 6 gap years, 3 application cycles, 5 MCAT attempts, an undergraduate science GPA of 2.69, master's degree, 8 med school interviews, and 3 waitlists. Brian is now a rising med student with an acceptance to Tulane University School of Medicine. So yay. Here today to share his journey with vulnerability and transparency and inspire others that their dream of becoming a physician really is possible. So thank you, Brian, for being here. And we're so excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege.
So Brian, I know you were had a little hiccup there. Do you need a minute to get yourself set up for screen share?
No, I'm ready. Let me try this out here. I'm
Okay.
gonna screen share. Let's see. And if you guys see my screen, let me know.
They won't until I do, and then I'll add it.
Okay.
That looks. Yeah. Can you just change it to presenter view so we don't have all that
Yeah,
peripheral stuff?
Yep. Whenever you get ready.
Perfect. Oh, it looks beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to stick around and help you navigate questions and stuff from the audience, but I know you've got some slides to share. So Leanne and I will be here to back you up, but we'll let you. They're really pumped about hearing from you. So they are excited to hear your story. They're referring to you as the GOAT, the man, the legend. People are pretty excited.
Well, and to our viewers, send us some questions because Brian will be taking a few at the end. So post them. Yep.
All right. We're going to back off, give you some space, but we'll be here.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So everybody, thank you guys for finding the time to be here. And again, I'm honored and privileged to be here. I do want to preface a little bit that I am trying to recover from a cold. So if I cough in a little bit in between or my voice goes, I apologize, but I'll try my best to kind of just stay put here together. But yeah, it's an honor and a privilege to be here. You know, I've been writing with Medical School HQ and now Matt for a while, and they really do a lot of things behind the scenes that have made me who I am today. And I'll be sharing a little bit of my journey for the people who are new, for the people who know me, people who are on, know that my journey from hood to MD has been, a journey has really tested my willpower more times than I can count. I feel like everybody's journey is different, but my journey has definitely tested me in ways that I'm here to just share it, socially, familially, personally, professionally. It's been a lot of barriers, but if this is what you want to do, I'm here to tell you guys that it is possible and you are capable. So I'll go ahead and get started here. I did a little slide, PowerPoint presentation to kind of put my journey and the big picture together. Now there's going to be a lot of things that obviously happen in between some of these things that I just can't capture at all, but I'm going to try my best here to share it with you guys. And so, excuse me. As I get started, I want to give you guys kind of a purpose again as to why I'm doing this and some disclaimers. First and foremost, I want to say that think of it basically like a case study. Everything that I'm showing you guys, think of it like a case study in the sense that this is just my journey, my story, and my path from where I was to where I am into medicine. And don't think of it as like a Bible. Don't think of it as like, this is what you need to do. Everybody's story is different. Everyone has a different journey. Everyone's battles are differently and they have their own worth in a way. So don't, try to start comparing and contrasting, kind of how you guys, Leanne and Rachel kind of started. I share my story with you guys and I'm here today because, I want to be as transparent and vulnerable as possible in hopes that it serves as a beacon of hope for those of you facing similar battles, kind of going through the same things. I know what it was like when I started the journey, how dark it was, to feel a certain way, right? To be going for this astronomical goal, being the first in my family to do this. And that's just the social aspect of the battle, right? There's still the GPA, the academic, the personal, professional battles. And so, I know how dark it can be. And this is why I'm sharing it to let you guys know that it does get better. And within all the darkness is always going to be light. And again, so sharing this because it's not for you to compare or contrast. It's for you to always remember that the only person you're really going to be fighting for or fighting against in battle with is you versus the person in the mirror. It's always going to be, you and how you stay accountable, how you stay responsible, things that you do on an everyday basis, just to remind yourself, that's not to compare or contrast. And again, collaboration, not competition, the infamous quote from MSHQ. So again, this is just to help empower the next person that's kind of going through similar battles. And, diversity, even though some might say I'm an epitome of it, right? As a first generation, as a Latino, going into medicine, but diversity is always going to be the experiences of their life and the experience of your life and how you live through it through your lens. Everybody has different experiences, no matter how you identify, no matter what you go through. Those are things that are going to obviously forge you and shape you depending on how you react to it. And lastly, the most important thing is that what I really want you guys to take home from today is that you are more than the numbers that try to define you. And what I mean by that is my whole life, I've been faced with statistics. I've been faced with the being the outlier with such a low GPA, a low MCAT, being first generation, everything, right? So I want you to know that no matter what the statistics say, no matter what the population says about what was going to be destined for you, you are more than that, and you are supposed to be the outlier. So I'll go ahead and get started here a little bit with my introduction as to who I am, right? So my name again is Brian Torres, and I'm here to tell you guys, right, my journey from being a statistic to now being a newly admitted and rising first year medical student. Along this journey, you know, as I said, is measuring my character, my willpower more times than I can count. And I am who I am today because of the culmination of the things that I've lived through, my community, my experiences that helped forge the person I am today and the physician that I aspire to be. And again, ultimately, I want you guys to always take home that you are more than numbers that try to define you, that try but do not define you. And I survive because the fire inside me, it burns brighter than the fire around me. And so that willpower, that strength always kind of kept me going. And again, it's not always going to be easy. I know it's easier said than done here, now that I'm on this side, but again, you got to remember why you're doing what you're doing. And so kind of again, short version of, you know, who I am, right? So my inconceivable dream of wanting to become a physician started when I was 15 years old. At this point right now, it's 13 years ago. I'm 28 years old now. And after 10 years on this journey, when I really started the Premed path on about 2010, you know, going through 3 application cycles in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, taking MCAT 5 times over the last 5 years and still not breaking 500. Undergraduate with an undergraduate science GPA of 2.69. It probably was lower than that, but now it's 2.69 because of some do-it-yourself post-bac credits, which I'll get into. Doing a master's degree, having a total of 8 medical school interviews over the last 3 application cycles, being on 3 wait lists. I finally received the life-changing acceptance to multiple medical schools, and I'm going to become a student doctor soon this fall. And so, thankfully, one day be a physician. So this is kind of my too long didn't read version, and now kind of break down my journey from where I was to where I am. And so a little bit about me. I want to just tell you guys again, first generation. I am a Latino, and I'm a son of immigrant parents from Mexico and Colombia. My mom is from Mexico, from Sinaloa specifically. My dad's from Colombia. Excuse me. I was born in California, and I was raised in Maryville, which is an area in West Valley, Phoenix, that's predominantly Hispanic and socioeconomically disadvantaged community. And I grew up in a single parent home. My mom became a single parent when I was 3 years old, and we moved from California, from Hayward to Phoenix, and that's kind of where I ultimately was raised and made. Again, I'm a first generation American, high school, college, and master's graduate, and I'm the first in my entire family to pursue higher education in medicine. Over time, from being a statistic, I ultimately became an engineer because I studied engineering in my undergraduate. I became a researcher doing my master's degree and a lot of my professional experiences. And now I'm going to soon become a doctor, or a medical student, one day become a doctor. And all these things, the culmination of all this theme, my journey, my evolution, has led me to a lifelong commitment to helping address some of the health, social, and educational inequities that afflict a lot of, especially first generation minorities and disadvantaged applicants. Outside of the professional and seriousness, you know, I enjoy a lot of things that involve physical and mental growth. Physically, you know, I like everybody else, trying to just work on my health, go to the gym, work on weights and cardio. I recently started dabbling in yoga, and I'm trying to do a little bit more cycling. That's kind of my goal in the fall, to kind of keep those non-negotiables in medical school. Mentally, again, yoga is something I've been trying to dabble with. It is a mental battle, as some of you yogis know. I'm an avid reader, an avid audiobook and podcaster, ultimately kind of plug in Medical School HQ. Really, you know, a lot of the content is literally worth its weight in gold. And outside of that, you know, try to travel when I can. Obviously, with the pandemic, so it's been a lot harder, but I'm hoping that there's a lot more travel leisure. I like to spend some time outdoors, again, just remembering, you know, nature and whatnot. And, you know, I like good craft brews, good wine. And yeah, it's a little bit of me outside of the seriousness. But I'm going to go a little bit more into my upbringing and my seed, right? Everybody has a story as to why they pursue medicine. What is the first thing that kind of got you, like, that aha moment? For me, I said, like in the beginning, my community ultimately made me who I am. Growing up in Maryville, as I mentioned, it was a predominant Hispanic, socioeconomically disadvantaged community. And a lot of the people there, you know, we kind of grow up devoid of positive role models. Many of us, unfortunately, fall victims to gun violence, drugs, incarceration. And so being around this area kind of just made me realize, like, wow, these things happened to me. Like, I wanted to do more for the people in my community and for myself. I didn't know that I wanted to do medicine yet, but that's kind of what started getting me think of, like, wanting to do more for myself and others. You know, once I had that dream, of trying to do something. I knew that I needed to pursue higher education, but throughout my entirety of my public school education, I was not college bound. I was statistically more likely to drop out than I was to graduate. And through that, out of my class of 1,000 students that started my freshman year in high school, about 650 was graduated. So almost about 40 to 50% of the people that went to my high school dropped out. And I'll get more into how many of us went to higher education. But also on the health aspect of it, another thing that really inspired me or was really a moving seed was that in my community, there was not a lot of access to healthcare. A lot of people that we had a local hospital, it was called Maryville Hospital, but over the years, they kind of fell bankrupt to multiple healthcare systems over 3 or 4 times. And so they didn't adequately serve the area. And a lot of the patients that were seeing happened to be gunshot wounds, GSWs, or teens that are prematurely fostered into parenthood, or a lot of people who, in my community, predominantly being Hispanic, a lot of people who were immigrants and like they scared and they feared seeking medical care at the risk of being deported. And so a lot of them didn't really seek out the care. A lot of my own family, we usually went to a curandero. We didn't really go to the hospital. And so a lot of those things kind of came into fruition of me wanting to pursue medicine. There's a lot more factors into it, but that's kind of like the gist of why I wanted to pursue it. And out of that, right, like I didn't really go to the hospital again unless we went to curandero. If we were really sick, we went to go see a doctor. But even then, I still don't really remember seeing a pediatrician until I was like 13 years old. And so when I did see him, my lack of interaction with a lot of doctors that looked like me or came from my racial or social class made me question if I was even equipped for certain societal roles. But again, I knew that I wanted to pursue this. I knew that I needed to go to college to get the higher education. And ultimately, I was one of 7, about a handful, about 7 or 12 out of 650 students that even made it to higher education out of 650. But a lot of my motivation to thinking that I was capable of becoming a physician, because my environment didn't show it to me. Very few people go to college, yet alone no one has ever gotten an MD from my high school. Was I did a summer enrichment program at my local medical school called MedStart, and this is in 2010. And through this program, they chose about 24 of us throughout the valley who are underrepresented in medicine, who come from like a socioeconomically disadvantaged background, and they kind of put us through this boot camp for 8 weeks, learning about all the different types of health professions. And here I have some pictures, just kind of showing what it was like, what I looked like in 2010, and like. This program really made me aware of what it takes to become a nurse, a doctor, physical therapist, all the above. And so this is kind of when we were on a hospital tour. And the picture in the middle was this guy named Dom, who was the first biomedical engineer I actually met in real life. And he kind of gave me an understanding of what biomedical engineering was. And after that, I knew that I wanted to pursue that for my undergraduate major as a pre-medicine person. And so fast forward, go to college from 2011 to 2015. But working my way up the ranks to graduate the top of my class in high school, it's really easy to do well. It wasn't easy, but it was easy enough to do well in high school when not a lot of people actually care about trying to go to college. And so I moved up the ranks really high. But when I got to college, was when I really started to realize the academic gaps I possessed relative to my peers, in an ocean full of pre-meds from people who come from different backgrounds, not being first generation and whatnot. I really struggled, and I struggled to do basic things in the textbooks and the lectures. And so I found myself just really struggling as a biomedical engineering major and as a pre-med, and being the first one in my family to do it, and very few people in my class to go to college. It was like I felt kind of alone. As well as part of my scholarship and my ability to go to college and pay for it, I was fortunate to be part of Arizona Assurance Scholars, which is kind of like a subsidized merit-based and need-based scholarship that helped fund my education. But part of that involved me having to also have a work-study job on campus. And so I worked for a catering company on campus about 20 to 40 hours a week. And so that really kind of also didn't allow me to study more. So I struggled a lot. And part of also not only struggling, I didn't really understand like how to ask for help. I didn't even think I had the ability to ask for help. I thought because I made it to college and therefore I got to kind of suck it up and go through it. And also I was just kind of like a little bit ignorant. I thought that I didn't need the help. I didn't really want to ask for it. I didn't even know how to ask for help. And so, but ultimately, I had a lot of reflection after about 2 or 3 semesters of college, and my GPA tumbled and I started losing scholarships. And I realized I needed to take ownership of my shortcomings, no matter what the situation was that I got into myself into. And so I acknowledged my shortcomings. I took ownership of them. I acknowledged my limitations, and I recognized the ability to ask for help to build the necessary study habits to thrive. And after that, started to seek out tutoring services, visited office hours, and built up a support system of peers and mentors. Ultimately, I ended up finishing with a good upward trend in my last 2.5 years of college. But even then, I was only able to secure a science and cumulative GPA of 2.5 and 2.9 respectively. And so in college, I did do a lot of pre-med stuff. I was involved with organizations and leadership and whatnot. Here's a picture of me going on a medical brigade to Panama, connecting with a lot of people who needed help out there. And then ultimately, I was able to graduate. College was pretty hard at the beginning. It really kicked my butt. But after that, I was able to graduate in 4 years. I was able to make it out. I came out, a lot better as a student academically, but my GPA was still low. And the reality of it is, it wasn't until after college that I really started to realize what it took to get to medical school. So I feel like a lot of people go to college, and that's where you're really supposed to discover yourself, figure yourself out. And part of it did, but I feel like my real growth and my real evolution didn't come until after college, between 2015 and now, right? And so I kind of had to reinvent myself. I had to kind of figure out, okay, what does it actually take to get into medical school? And so even though my journey, again, my dream started in 2010 when I did the MSPA program in high school, it wasn't until 2015 that I really started to learn what it took to get to medical school. So I started to ask myself, what is a medical school application? What is the MCAT really? And how do I really prepare for it? And as you can see here in the title, my first 2 MCATs were 46 and a 490, right? Because I have a little meme here for you guys. Essentially, I started to ask myself, I started to realize that the medical school application in itself and the MCAT is literally a whole other world that I didn't even know about. And here's a pun, right? Like it always has been, kid. Like it always has been like that. And I feel like a lot of that stuff is really hard to learn until you really start getting into neck deep into it. In college, I did do a Kaplan course in my senior year, 2014, 2015, but I never really found it helpful. I wasn't really committed. I didn't really understand what was going on. And so at that time in college, I never took MCAT. It wasn't until after college that I studied over the summer, and by study, I mean the fact that, I just read some of the concept books and took no full lengths and thought that was going to be good enough. And the results showed. In the fall 2015, I took it and I scored a 486. And I was like, oh, shoot, like this is going to be with me forever. But I started to kind of just start learning more about what does it really take to take the MCAT. And, retrospectively or in hindsight, I wish the future me would have stopped me. I wish I would have had somebody to stop me and tell me, don't do it, kid. But again, not having supporters and mentors really like we have now on social media, I feel like it's really easy to find mentors now if you really want to get out there. But back then, 2015, it wasn't as big. And so there was no next step. There was no Blueprint. There was no UWorld. And the results showed when I didn't know how to take full English or really study. But regardless, I carried on. At that time, I obviously didn't apply to medical school. That was still a whole other thing that I still had to learn. But I kind of started to I realized my shortcomings, and I started to take some of my prereqs, my science courses. I started taking them at a community college. It's kind of like a do-it-yourself post-bac. So going from a university to community college, started taking some new science courses. And I was starting to get my clinical experience up. I started to volunteer, and I was volunteering up until 3 hospitals at the same time simultaneously. And then I got a job as a pharmacy tech. That was entirety of my 2015, essentially. In 2016, this is when I took the actual MCAT a second time, and that was when I got the 490. And at the time as well, I was working full-time in 2016 as an MA in the beginning of 2016. And that was like an 8 to 5 during business hours. And then I started working as a scribe on the weekends. So I had 2 jobs. So I worked 8 to 5 Monday to Friday as an MA, and on the weekends I worked 2 12-hour shifts in the ER. And I did that for 10 months. And so during that time, I literally was getting so much experience, and it was so rewarding, but it was also very challenging. But I got to experience what it was like to be at the bedside from the private clinic to the OR setting, because I was in ophthalmology, so I got to go to the OR and then ER. And during that time, I really started documenting my journey. I took this picture right before night shift overnight when I kind of just saw some motivation, right? Like, only this is doctor parking only. And so I remember this picture. I had this picture, on my phone. I had it in my background. And then I started to, kind of just start studying for the MCAT again. I knew I wanted to take it a second time while doing all this, while working full time and doing all these things and trying to volunteer. And, tell myself again that maybe the first one was a fluke. I didn't really take any full length, kind of just reviewed content. I felt stronger now having some clinical experience. But then I took it in fall 2016 and scored a 490. So at this point, I had a 46, a 490 was my second one. And I was kind of just, again, devastated. I didn't apply to medical school, but I did apply to a 5-year MD/MS linkage program offered at my local state school. You need to be a state resident and everything. And about 400 people applied because you have to meet the criteria. And they interviewed about 33 for 10 spots. And I interviewed, and I took this picture here as well, trying to document my journey of what it was like interviewing, how blessed and how grateful I felt to be there. Ultimately, you know, it was humbling to just be there, to be allowed to share my journey and my aspirations, but I still fell short. You know, I didn't get accepted. And so I started to reflect again on my academic, personal, professional experiences, my shortcomings, and I started to weigh my options to backup plan. Not a backup plan from plan A, which is to go to medical school and to be in medicine, but what can I do since this S&P didn't take me to continue to evolve myself personally, professionally, academically? And so I applied to other programs, and ultimately I ended up I opted for a research-intensive master's program in my local medical school. And again, the point here is to always have a plan A. Plan A is always the goal, but you must always be 10 steps ahead of your future self and have a backup on the backup of a backup. So if I wasn't going to get an S&P, what was I going to do to make my own do-it-yourself S&P? What was I going to do to continue to improve myself for the next following year? That ultimately led to 2017, where I gained the ability to start my master's degree. And in that, during that year, I also, you know, not only did I have basic science research experience through my master's program, but it was a translational program. And I also got clinical research experience, which I'll get into a little bit right now. And this is actually the first time I started to apply to medical school, was 2018. But before I get there, in early 2017, I started my MS. I quit my job as an MA, and I started working as a scribe only. And so between my graduate courses during the day or the afternoons, I worked a lot of overnight shifts in the ER. And in the mornings, I would spend my time doing my lab bench research as part of my master's degree. And again, this is a really tough time trying to juggle it all. But here I have a picture of me when I first started my master's degree in the research lab in the background, you can see here. And this is a picture of me and one of my mentors, Patricia. And she was actually the director of the program that I started in 2010, the MSPA program. And we kept the longevity and that long-term relationship as one of my mentors, and ultimately one of my letter writers. And so if she's watching, a special shout out to her, because she was one of the first people that believed in me when I was still in high school. And so when the program opened, the program started, and I joined the lab, I invited her to the opening of this new building, and she was kind of my plus one. So you know, it's really important to always remember who the people who believed in you when no one else did. And so it's a picture of her. By the end of 2017, I had already finished all my courses. I finished my graduate science GPA with 3.58, about 90 credit hours worth. And at the end of that, because I no longer had courses, I started to actually just prioritize a lot of my time in 2018 to my lab bench research, as well as I quit the job as an ER scribe, and I started to work. I applied for another job, and I started to work as a clinical research coordinator. So now I was getting the experience that I needed from a basic translational clinical research side, and I started working for my local medical school. So at that point, I was kind of plugged in with the medical school. I was working at the university hospital, and then I was also in the research lab for the same medical school, in the cardiology department. And so here I have this cool picture of a case that I was in. This is a TAVR, transcatheter aortic valve replacement, and just kind of what a cool role to be able to be in a role where I was in medical devices, clinical trials. And so now I finally felt whole. I felt good enough to shoot my shot to apply to medical school for the first time. And this is the 2018-2019 cycle. But I wanted to do it right, because this is going to be my third MCAT attempt. And I wanted to prepare my first real application. But I knew I needed to invest in professional help. And this is where I hired a next step tutor and started working with Dr. Gray personally, one-on-one. And again, at this time is when I truly started to be introspective with the culmination of all my experiences academically, professionally, and personally. And this is kind of my theme, right? You always have to reflect on who you are outside of the academic, who are you personally, who are you professionally, and ultimately how that makes you who you are and who you aspire to be. So I applied in 2018. However, I had taken the MCAT the third time. This time it was September 2018. I got my score back in October, and I got a 492. I had only gone up 2 points, even though I worked really hard with a tutor. There's a lot of details to this, but a lot of it I owe to myself, in the sense of, like, you know, juggling so many things. It's really hard to commit to research, to working full time, and then having to study. And I'll get a little bit more into, like, learning how to cut back on things, to prioritize the things that really matter, like the MCAT. But at the time, again, I felt so defeated. I remember the moment very clearly. It was a Monday morning when I got the email that I scored a 492, and I was devastated. And so I spent the following days kind of just, you know, mourning, defeated, reflecting, and again, just trying to take ownership of where I fell short. And at the time, I had only added 3 schools to my MCAS, my 2 state schools and 1 out of state. And so at that point, I decided I didn't want to move forward, because, like with secondaries, to have a complete application, because I feel like no school would ever interview me. No one would really take a shot at me with the 492. And so I kind of closed that figurative chapter of my life, or of that cycle. Excuse me. But 3 days later, is when I received an invitation to interview for an out-of-state school that was in the Midwest. And the reason why was because that school didn't require secondary. And so it was a roller coaster of emotions. I had woken up Monday morning to a 492, not the best score that I wanted. And then fast forward, by the end of that week, I had an interview to a medical school, an MD medical school. And, this is the first time in my life. So that was about October, and the medical school interview was going to be in January. And this was the first time in my life that I was 1,000 miles away from my home pursuing my dreams. And it felt so surreal to like just remember how far I had come from where I was, right? Like you guys have seen my journey so far, like from my upbringing to college, to reflection, to falling short of the S&P, and then now finally being interviewing with the 492, trying to shoot my shot and trying to finally show them, why I'm worthy of being in medicine and why I want to be in medicine. And I remember that night really clearly, like that trip. I remember just being 1,000 miles away from home, being in my Airbnb, and I remember just calling my mom and trying to share my dreams and everything with the people that have been supporting me through the journey. And I remember interview day, I felt like a dream because, walking on campus with all these infamous people that everybody in medicine, they're trying to pursue medicine, inspiring each of us with their own story. And here's a picture of the campus. So normally I would ask the chat right now, like if anybody can try to figure out what school this is, just to see kind of like a little pop quiz. But because I can't see the chat, I'm going to just keep going. But essentially, this is the medical school. And if whoever can figure it out, it's Indiana University. And again, just like my disclaimer in the beginning, everything that I share with you guys is a case study. It doesn't mean go apply to Indiana. Again, why they interview me, it's a whole other reason with the 492. But the whole point here is to try to prove to you guys that you are more than numbers to try to define you. Even though at 492, I didn't believe in myself, but they did believe in me. And they did give me an opportunity, and not many did. And I never would have known who else would have given me an opportunity had they not send me an invitation to interview because they didn't have a secondary application. So it's a quick picture that I took when I was there. It was snowing, being from Arizona. This was horrible, but I loved it. It was an amazing feeling. And so again, just I did a lot of reflecting when I was there. I remember just feeling so grateful and so humble because just remembering how far my parents came from where they were to where I was. I felt very privileged to be there, to be coming from the ranchos and the ranchers from Mexico to then being into a world-renowned medical institution was very humbling. So unfortunately, they didn't accept me. I got the final decision. Hold on, give me a second. They didn't accept me. I was not admitted because they did give me feedback. I spoke to the director of admissions, and he told me that the reason was a lot of it came down to the competitiveness of the MCAT scores and the interview pool. But again, I was just grateful for the opportunity. And so I kind of did a lot of reflecting. It felt really good to finally have an opportunity to know that I was finally worthy. And so going into the 2019 cycle, excuse me, I needed to do a lot of reflection. I knew that I wanted to do it alone this time. And so going to my fourth MCAT, I wanted to do a lot of self-study. And kind of what I touched on earlier today, or last one, was I needed to cut back on responsibilities. I knew that in order for me to do well in MCAT, which was the one thing stopping me from getting to medical school, was that something had to give. I had to cut back responsibilities. I couldn't do everything else in the day. I knew the MCAT at the end of the day, it just wasn't going to work. The MCAT needed to be first. And so I dedicated my summer. I took a vacation leave from my work, and I just dedicated my summer to studying. I took the MCAT again in September 2019, while revamping my MCATs because, just trying to redo my experiences and everything, my personal statement. And then again, got the MCAT late in October. And at the time, I had only decided to apply to 3 schools. But, I got my score back in October, and I got a 497. Not the best, but I was damn proud because I worked really hard to get it up. I had really hard to work on my score, and I put in the work. And, it wasn't the best, but I knew that, I put it in. So I put in the work. So I was happy and I was proud of it. And during that time, again, I went to war with me versus the man in the mirror. I reminded myself of why I'm here. And I realized I no longer wanted to wait to become a doctor or student doctor to do things that I was always passionate about. I had a vision of how I wanted to be a student doctor, how I wanted to be a doctor. But instead of doing that, I started to do those things now. And that, a lot of that evolved into serving my community and doing things that a lot of things that I wish that I want to do in the future, but I started to do them instantly. And because of that, I kind of had a lot of clarity on the type of doctor that I needed to be, not want to be, but I needed to be. And so with that, I kind of started to really pick my school list to schools that were going to help me become the person I needed to become. And at that time, I went to UC Davis for that conference. This is pre-pandemic. This is 2019 in the fall. And I ended up, before the conference, I ended up adding 22 other schools. So I did 22 secondaries in a week before the conference. And here's a picture of me and Dr. Gray finally meeting him in person at the conference, and I got to really network with schools. Got to put myself in front of a lot of schools and in front of them, put a face to my application and a face to them, and really just kind of just tell them that I am more than my application and the numbers. Here's another picture as well from the WMC conference, which happened a month later. And me and my friend right there, one of my best friends, Jeffrey. And then, yeah, just went up. I showed myself up, and I tried to advocate for myself, try to tell them why I needed to go to the school, not why I wanted to, but why I needed to. And ultimately, that led me to me landing 4 MD interviews in the 2019 cycle. And so I got my interview again to Indiana. This is the score here on the left, or my left of the screen. And I got the interview by November. And again, interview same date in January 15th. I got a second interview to my home school, which is University of Arizona. And then I got a third interview when I landed in Indiana, the day before my interview for St. Louis. And I felt like it was going to be another rejection. And here's a picture of the campus. And again, I got an interview for Tulane as well. At that time, I had initially gotten rejected, but then I guess they decided to reconsider me, gave me an invite to interview. And between all these interviews occurred over 6 weeks. So I was just flying all over the place. This is right before the pandemic in the early 2020. And so, yeah, I just felt really blessed, really privileged. I really felt this is my year. I worked really hard to be here. And again, a lot of these schools, again, I got to put a disclaimer, doesn't mean go apply there if you have a low stats. These schools, the median averages for their MCAT, their averages for their MCAT, their GPAs, I was light years away. I was one whole number away, not 0.1, but a whole number away. And so this is why it's really important to figure out your why and where you want to be and pick the schools that are going to help you become who you need to become. And so, unfortunately, I went to these interviews, I got on with some wait lists. And over the time, for schools that waitlisted me, I sent updates, I sent letters of intent, but I didn't get off. But again, I fell short. I didn't get in. And as the pandemic flared, things got delayed, postponed, but I didn't let that deter me or stop me from continuing to work on the things that made me who I wanted to become. So again, the primary application, it's where you have a lot of growth. The secondaries force you to be introspective, and me just having an opportunity to interview was an honor and a privilege, and I was just so grateful for that. And acceptance is a dream, but I didn't let that stop me from who I wanted to become, and I continued to work on who I aspired to be every day. Again, unfortunately, I didn't get off the wait list, but I continued to prepare my application. I pre-wrote a lot of it. I submitted this time on July 1st. And a lot of things that I was able to highlight now that were new was I finished my master's degree. I defended my thesis. I started working on initiatives in the community, specifically COVID related. I started to do a lot more grassroots pipeline initiatives with my high school, my local medical school, and I started to mentor a lot of other kids that were first year disadvantaged in URM. Applied to medical school with me. So this is the past cycle, right? Now we're just starting a new cycle as of yesterday. But this past cycle, 2020, 2021, I started to really just prepare myself early, get into it. And this time I had to take my MCAT the 5th time, but I had only dedicated 6 weeks to it. This is going to be my 5th attempt, and this is the COVID version. So I took it in August, and this time they were giving the scores back early. So by the end of August, I had my score. And my practice tests were doing well, between 500 and 510, but I unfortunately scored a 497 again. Again, they're kind of defeated, but at least I was happy that it didn't go down, and it wasn't worse, but it was the same. And again, I was just happy that it worked out, and more importantly, that my science scores peaked. My cars kind of remained the same, and my psych social was the thing that played me. It flopped for the first time ever compared to my diagnostic. But I was just proud of the science increase. It's something that you guys need to know. We could probably get into this later, but a lot of schools take what's called a super score, which means they take the highest score in each section of every attempt you made and make like a new super composite score. So me having an increase in the sciences really helped kind of put me up for certain schools like George Washington and whatnot, which was, why I was still happy at the end. And so, throughout the last cycle, I ensured to keep in touch with all the schools that rejected me. And this is really important because even if they rejected me, interviewed me, waitlisted me, whatever the case, I try to build a genuine connection with somebody in admissions or somebody at that school to ask for feedback. Hey, I know you didn't give me an interview. I know I got rejected. I know that you guys probably have a lot of inquiries, but I want to know, from my own personal growth and development, where did I fall short and what could I do better? I always wanted to just see what they had to say. A lot of times it's really easy to just say your MCAT, your GPA, but I wanted to see if there was anything besides that. And during that time, it allows for a lot of growth. And so, you continue to put your application on their desk. The least I can say is say not now. But you also get to learn what schools are going to be for you based on the feedback they give you, and kind of start building a genuine connection and always follow up on that. So this time around, applying a third time, I had all my secondaries complete, a majority of them by the time my score came back, And then by the first week or two of September, I already finished I think I did 38 primaries. And at this time, I think I worked by 30 secondaries at this time. And then finally, in November 2020, November 20th of 2020, I finally got accepted. But why is this important? Because of the feedback, right? I genuinely owe my first acceptance to a lot of the feedback and keeping in touch with people in admissions. And, again, some of them might deny you feedback, but you never know, and it doesn't hurt to ask, even if the website says otherwise. Some schools listened, others didn't. And, you also learn about what schools are going to be for you. If a school tells me that they want a certain score for cars, then I know that's not going to be a school for me, because they're not looking at anything besides my car score. They're not willing to look at my evolution, my growth, my trends, why I have more to offer on critical thinking, because I have a master's and a research degree. And so kind of also learn about a lot about that. And so while some deny you, you kind of discover which schools are for you. Others might take the time to truly listen and advise you. And to this day, some of the most powerful and growth conversations that I've had with people happen to be because of being able to reach out to them. And, regardless of the outcome, just keep in touch. Even if it doesn't work in your favor, again, you genuinely want to get invested with these people. And the Med community is very small. And so ultimately, this led to me me being able to ultimately be accepted. This past year was new university, and then ultimately I got accepted. And so here it is, a picture of me in the medical school that accepted me. Unfortunately, I ultimately didn't decide on that, and I was really heartbroken. But this is the first school that I took this picture a year to the date, from the conference to the time I got accepted, and it all came into fruition. Here's just me sharing my moment with my mother. And so I have a lot of advice, and I know we're running out of time, but I just want to tell you guys, at the end of the day, reflect on who you are, choose schools are going to be, who are going to help you become who you need to become, and use every experience as growth. And if you don't apply, you're never going to know. But if you do apply, it's going to be better than 0%. And so, yeah.
I love this story, Brian. I mean, everybody in the chat is just overcome. There was a period there where you were a little choky, and you might have been feeling your feels, or you might have been having a cold, or it might have been both. But it was making all of us and yeah, I mean, I don't know how many times Ryan Gray and I have said your stats are not your story, and you are 100% proof of that. I think you're a real testament to staying positive. I know you lived this, but throughout that presentation, you would tell us a thing, and it would be easy to be downtrodden by that thing. And it's not that you didn't feel sad, but you found a positive piece and you kept going. And that is so important. And that's going to matter not just through the process that's taken you to where you are now, but going forward to get through the 4 years at Tulane, to get through your career as a doctor. You've got to find a way to stay well, and you're really doing it. So yeah, I think everybody was just thrilled to hear that story. I'm sorry that we don't have time to do questions, but maybe one day we can have you back for a more detailed session. I do want to plug some of the groups you'd mentioned. So I put up before where people can find you, but I know you said that there are some groups that you find to be really helpful. Latinx in Medicina and Bridging Admissions. We had some folks from Me Mentor earlier today. There's a lot of places to get mentorship out there. And it sounds like that's part of how you made your success, is by getting help wherever you could get it.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. And yeah, I was getting a little bit of a choky just thinking about it, and also just a cough. So combination of it all. But yes, my IG handle is there, my Twitter, from Hood to MD, just at the title of the presentation. Always DMs are always open. I know what it's like. And then I plug into the people that I've worked with as far as mentorship. I mentor through Bridging Admissions. I do a lot of it personally too, but with medical school starting soon, I'm pretty sure I'll have to come back on that. And, I want to plug in Latinx and Medicina, Mi Mentor, because like I said in the beginning, it's really hard to believe you can do something without seeing someone that can do it. And when I was going to college, I wish I would have had that social media connection to connect with other people kind of going through it. So, first generation disadvantage or whatever, you need someone to talk to, we're always going to be there, all of us. And the whole point is to pay it forward.
Mm-hmm. Great. So guys, what's going to happen now is the yellow room is going to close for the day, and we're going to head over to the blue room for our wrap-up session and raffle winners. Brian, it's just always such a pleasure to interact with you. You are a joy to many people. I cannot wait to hear about your amazing career.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to share it with you guys. And thank you for being here. Thank you guys for everything you do behind the scene as well.
Oh, thanks. Take care. All right, heading over to the blue room. I'm going to shut this room down because the blue room is the last session of the day. So we'll see you there.